Hello class. Firstly, I'm sorry there's no picture for some reason. I'll try and sort it out next time. So today is chapter 13 of the Lavellan. Now, before we get started, don't forget today is also the last day to complete the health task. So please make sure you go along to Google Classroom and do that. Now, if you remember chapter 12, the main character had tried to trap the Lavellan and then let it go again because she realised it wasn't right. But then she got really, really unhappy because she'd lose Darwin, and the Lavellan actually came up to her of its own accord. So let's see what's going to happen next. I hardly dared to move. If I did, I might frighten the Lavellan away again. But what good was it anyway? I decided I wasn't going to put it in the cage, and it was hardly going to just follow me home. So I spoke very softly and told it about everything that had happened since I had gone to live with my mum. I started to get very emotional when I talked about Darwin, and the Lavellan crawled up, so it was sitting on my knee like a lapdog. I don't know if it understood what I was saying. To be honest, I think it was more my tone of voice that it understood, but it could tell when I was getting sad. I was aware that the animal was highly poisonous, and I kept my gloves on just to be sure. I didn't want to leave any bare skin which might touch it. Hesitantly, I held out my hand, as I knew you were supposed to do with dogs. Let them make the first move. The Lavellan crept back to begin with, but when I held my hand still, it came forward to sniff it. Once it decided it smelt all right, I was able to stroke its back. I couldn't feel it very well because of the gloves, but I could tell it wasn't like Darwin's fur. It was much shorter for a start. The Lavellan crawled further up and rubbed his head against my chest. We stayed like that for a while, getting to know each other in a strange animal behaviour type way. I had learned to copy animals when meeting them for the first time. What they did was usually the acceptable form of communication between that species. Carefully and very gently, I put my hands around the Lavellan's chest and lifted it up. It didn't seem frightened. In fact, it just stayed very still and gazed at me. I stood up awkwardly, still holding the Lavellan. It still didn't struggle, so I settled it in the crook of my arm and it just stayed there. I decided to start walking back to the house and see how far I would get. I told myself that once it started struggling, I would put it on the ground immediately. I had built up a small level of trust with the creature. I didn't want to ruin that now. But it didn't struggle. It just sat there in my arms until the cottage came in sight. I stroked it all the way through the gloves, and I was so relieved that I'd insisted on feeding it every day. I was sure that's why it was now letting me carry it. When the house came in sight, I saw at the top of the hill 2 cars, not including my mum's car. I was pretty sure none of them belonged to Eric either. I held the Lavellan closer, more for my own support than anything, and walked towards the cottage. My mum was sitting at the outside table talking to 2 men and 1 woman. I stopped in my tracks. Sitting next to one of the men was a dog. At least, I think it was a dog. It was about the same size as Darwin, but the size wasn't what bothered me. Instead of a single dog's head, there were 3 heads, and each one was staring at me and snarling. This made each of the adults look across, and at once the dog's owner stopped the strange creature from snarling with a firm word. Mum leapt up and then stopped. "Darling," she began, "is that what I think it is?" I looked down at the Lavellan, who was quite comfortable looking around at everyone. I nodded and started to explain how I had put it in the cage, but had to let it out again, and then how it had just come up to me. The man with the 3-headed dog chuckled. "Just like your mother," he laughed. "I'm so proud of you," Mum beamed. "Now let me introduce you to some of my colleagues. This is George," she pointed to the only one who had spoken so far, "and this is Chris and Carol." Ordinary names, I thought to myself, but their pets look far from ordinary. I think Iliad scared you. I'm sorry, George said, patting one of the heads of his dog, but that's why he's going to be so helpful against your Eric. I rang George because he has a lorry large enough for tourists. He then took it on himself to ring around a few of our friends to see if they could help. More precisely, Carol grinned, to see if our pets could help. Least I could do, George muttered, looking at the ground. So, what are your pets? I asked, holding the Lavellan tightly in case any of them were dangerous. Well, mine is in George's lorry, Carol began. She and Taurus know each other quite well, so they should be able to travel together. I looked at Chris, the second man who hadn't spoken yet. He was older, with very tan skin. I don't have any pets, Chris said. I had to strain my ears to hear him. I find them a bit of a pain, to be honest. We're not all like you, Chris, Mum smiled, and I felt as though I was out of the loop. I clung tight to the Lavellan. And now you have a pet of your own, Carol said, pointing at the creature in my arms. What, the Lavellan? I asked. No, he's going back in the wild tomorrow. He's just going to help us before that. Chris nodded, and the others smiled. That's what I said about Iliad, George laughed. Okay, and that's the end of the chapter. So, there's 3 questions for you to do. First question, Rex Retriever. How many friends had come over to Mum's house? How many friends had come over to Mum's house? The second question, do you think the Lavellan understands English? And this is the most important part of the question. Why do you think that? So it's not good enough to just say yes or no. You've got to say why. So do you think the Lavellan understands English? Why do you think that? And the last question. There is something strange about Chris. What do you think it is? So there's something a bit odd about him. He's not like the others. For one thing, George rang round them all, asking if their pets could help, but Chris doesn't have a pet, so why did he ring him? So there's something strange about him. What do you think it is? Why do you think he's different? Why do you think he's different from the others? Okay, and that is it for today. So I will get this uploaded and then put onto Google Classroom. Don't forget the health task today. And also I've posted up a link to some online Sudokus. And this afternoon I'll be posting a video about a spelling test that I would like you all to do. Now you'll have to be very honest with that. I'm trusting you. Because obviously when we're at school I can keep an eye on things, but I can't particularly when we're at home. So I am trusting you to do it honestly. So enjoy your day. It looks like another lovely day out there. So try and get outside at some point and have fun.